Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Trebas Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Demolition is underway on part of the Oceanside Pier. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Last April, a fire damaged the end of the pier, including a former Ruby's diner. KPBS North County reporter Tanya Thorne joined crews today as the work started.
Nearly 6 months after a fire started here at the Oceanside Pier, crews are finally in to start to demo out some of that damaged restaurant and the end of the pier. And here staff tells me that it'll be quite some time before the pier is fully reopened and rebuilt.
We're in the very early stages of demolition. We're taking down the heavy steel portion of the building. We're still installing the debris containment underneath.
Brian Thomas, the city engineer for Oceanside, says once the steel beams of the old Ruby's diner are removed, debris haul away will begin.
We'll be cleaning up everything off the deck. Once the deck is cleared, they'll start removing the deck and the rest of the railing around it, and then we'll be able to finish up our structural analysis.
As crews prepared the platform underneath the pier to catch debris and protect the ocean, Thomas says the damage looked worse than they thought.
So areas we thought that were safe are a little chancy at this point. Like we do know that underneath the building itself, most of the stringers are gone at this point.
Stringers are the beams that connect and support the pier and are critical to its stability.
In an abundance of caution for worker protection and marine protection and beach users protection, we're keeping people out of those areas. We're in the process of adding additional shoring so that we can actually bring it down safely.
In the coming weeks, trucks will begin to haul the debris from the pier, but it won't cause any closures, just added precautions.
So they'll have a spotter in front of the equipment, a spotter behind the equipment. So if you see vehicles moving, please step to one side, allow the vehicles to pass, and then continue with your day. I know the fishermen are out here and we want them here, so if they could pick up their poles and push them closer to the railing instead of having them stick out 3 or 4 feet into the aisleway, that will give the rest of the people walking on the pier a place to stand while the vehicles pass.
The pier reopened just weeks after the fire. Frequent pier fisherman Sebastian Nava appreciates the city opening the pier so soon and keeping it open while work is ongoing.
We thought it was going to be closed for years, like for real, like that. They're just going to close the whole thing down so they can tear everything down, but they didn't. They allowed us to come fish. People, locals, and tourism come back on, so that was pretty cool.
He sees new opportunities for the Oceanside Pier.
No more restaurants, but that's probably not the case. But just to open like a shady spot, a shady area, have a big deck for extend it, because I think they wanted to extend it to like a hammerhead size or hammerhead shape. Maybe extend it and just allow people to come, like almost like a picnic area, just something to have for views and for fishing.
Crews are expected to finish the demo by the end of this year. Once that's done, staff will begin to prepare plans and apply for permits to rebuild. It could be 3 to 4 years before the Oceanside Pier is fully rebuilt and open to the public. Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
A $30 million settlement has been reached with the families of 3 women who died in a 2019 bluff collapse in Encinitas. KPBS's Scott Rod reports the agreement also includes policy changes to promote safety around the bluffs.
The tragic bluff failure happened at Grandview Beach in Encinitas. Patrick Davis lost his wife, daughter, and sister-in-law.
I would just feel terrible if someone else's family, got involved in a bluff collapse and was killed, and I didn't do anything to try and prevent it.
The family sued the city of Encinitas, the state of California, and a local condominium association, alleging negligence. The lawsuit found a state geologist had previously warned about the risk of bluff failures at that location. The family also alleged city lifeguards failed to adequately protect beachgoers. In addition to the financial settlement, the city of Encinitas will put up additional signage in risky areas and require lifeguards to warn people about the dangers of sitting next to bluffs. Researchers at UC San Diego's Scripps Institution of Oceanography are currently researching the feasibility of an early warning system for bluff collapses. The scientists say the research has returned promising early results. Scott Rodd, KPBS News.
Well, looking ahead here to tonight, lows along the coast dropping down to the 50s here for the most part, staying right in that mid-50 range. We do have those low clouds. They are going to continue to expand here along the coast and for our inland areas over the next few days. Though the bigger story has been temperatures. We've had that brief warm-up. We'll tell you when temperatures start to drop, though, coming up.
Kaiser Permanente and union negotiators representing thousands of healthcare workers were back at the bargaining table today. They've been on the picket line since Monday. Workers are asking for more time for patient care tasks outside of appointments and more pay. The National Union of Healthcare Workers says it wants their members to spend 7 hours a week on tasks that can't be done during therapy sessions, such as patient calls, emails, and appointments.
To provide good counseling, but also to follow up with their patients. And that means following up with calls, having the time and space to coordinate social services to supplement their treatment. Those things are important.
In a statement to our media partner KGTV, Kaiser Permanente calls the strike unnecessary, arguing more patient care time would make appointments less accessible. The city of San Diego is expected to lose more than 600 shelter beds by the end of the year. But Mayor Todd Gloria says the city is moving forward with other options, including adding 230 tents at 2 safe sleeping sites for people experiencing homelessness. KPBS's Alexander Nguyen was there today as Gloria touted the success of one such site.
My daughter's going to be a cheerleader, my baby's going to be a lion, and my 4-year-old is going to be Sonic.
Kayla Herrera is showing off the costumes her 3 children will be wearing for Halloween. Her family's been staying at a trailer at the Rose Canyon Safe Sleeping Site.
You do get a roof over your head, which is a trailer. That's very, very beneficial for me and my family. Before, we were staying in hotels and paying weekly, and it's just too much. We couldn't afford it. So here, we are able to save money.
Herrera has been staying here for the past 6 months, but her family will soon move into an apartment. Success cases like hers are why San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria says sites like these are needed.
2/3 of the folks who have accessed services at this site have gone on to get permanent housing. This site has only been operating for a single year, but it has been wildly successful.
This is H Barracks. The mayor wants to build a safe sleeping site here, and today a request for proposal went live, looking for an operator of a site like this. H Barracks was the city's police and fire department training facility. It's located near the airport and close to transit, making it ideal for people experiencing homelessness to access the services they need.
UCSD did some research and identified that lots that had 24-hour staffing would probably produce better results.
Michael Hopkins is the CEO of Jewish Family Service, which runs the Rose Canyon site. He says the vast majority of people living in their cars are experiencing homelessness for the first time.
They've just gotten settled with the idea of being in a car, and it actually takes them a while, takes through our work, for them to believe that they're going to be successful again, because they don't want to go back into a house and then to be evicted again.
Herrera says her children are happy and thriving at this safe parking site, but the number one question they keep asking her is,
when are we going to get a house, you know? And so now we're almost there.
According to the latest point-in-time homeless census, people living in their cars make up the fastest-growing segment of the homeless population. Gloria says that's why the success here needs to be replicated and expanded to help people into housing.
That's why we're working aggressively on things like Kettner and Vine, H Barracks, to build more. But when things like Golden Hall are closing, well, we've expanded our safe sleeping sites, right? When some of these others are going down, we're finding new opportunities.
Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
With less than 2 weeks until Election Day, how can voters be sure that their ballots will be counted accurately? San Diego County election officials have been testing their equipment and inviting the public to watch. KPBS reporter Diego Mayor shows us how it went.
Add up all the votes that are on all those ballots that you just filled in.
It's called a public logic and accuracy test, and what it is an inside look to instill confidence in the democratic process ahead of Election Day.
I don't have a lack of trust, but I would like to have as much information as possible to communicate with people about why they can trust elections.
It was San Diego resident Katie Alexander's first time taking part. She was one of a handful of members of the public and local officials who attended the event. Their role is to fill out mock ballots and then observe as they're tallied.
They have all these protocols in place to make sure that the ballots are counted and that signatures match and that the elections are fair.
Sean Braum is the Assistant San Diego County Registrar of Voters. He says the full public logic and accuracy testing took place a few weeks back with over 150,000 ballots. But this is a condensed version for anyone in the public to take part in.
What we will be doing today is casting ballots or voting on blank ballots, tabulating them by hand, and then using them to scan in the tabulation system to compare the two.
Braum says the tests are to ensure all the equipment functions as expected to properly count votes.
So it is another measure of clear and transparent elections showing the accuracy and the validity of the tabulation system.
Alexander says it also helps to dispel false narratives about election security.
There was never any discussion of candidates. There was never any discussion of politics. It was all about how to manage ballots and make sure that they're all counted.
Braum says the county registrar has offered the public logic and accuracy tests ahead of other recent elections, too. The 2024 presidential election is November 5th. Diego Mayor, KPBS News.
And if you haven't cast your ballot yet, check out the KPBS Voter Hub. That's where you'll find all of our explainers on local races and measures, as well as a quiz to find out where candidates stand on issues that matter to you. Just go to kpbs.org/voterhub. In our next Why It Matters segment, we look at something you'll definitely see on your ballot this year. Our Public Matters partner, Scott Lewis, explains.
The word bond is all over the ballots of San Diegans this year. In San Diego, voters will have to decide on 7 different school bonds. If they approve them, districts will borrow billions of dollars and then raise property taxes to pay them off. Let me show you how it works. Take a typical ballot from Chula Vista. Measure SW is a bond for the Southwestern Community College District. Measure RR is a bond for the Sweetwater Union High School District. And Measure AA is a bond for the Chula Vista Elementary School District. Now look closer at the language of each of those bonds. Measure RR would levy $30 per $100,000 of assessed valuation. Measure SW would levy an average of $25 per $100,000 of assessed valuation. And Measure AA would levy $29 per $100,000 of assessed valuation. Now, what the heck does that even mean? It means that your property taxes will go up by a certain amount depending on how much the county values your property. If you own a home that the county values at $100,000, then you would pay $30 more per year if Measure RR passes. Obviously, homes are worth a lot more than that here, but what's important is not what the home can sell for, but what it's valued at by the county. In California, official property values do not go up with the market. They stay pegged to when a home was originally purchased. So if you bought a home for about $500,000 10 years ago, its assessed value is not much higher than that. And if you have an assessed value home of $500,000 in Chula Vista and those 3 bonds pass, you would pay $420 more per year in property taxes. Meanwhile, in the city of San Diego, there's Measure HH, a bond to support San Diego community colleges. If it passes and you have a $500,000 assessed home, you'd pay $125 more per year in property taxes. Unlike other special tax increases, these bonds only need approval from 55% of voters. If approved, districts immediately borrow money, but they don't have to borrow the full amount of the bond right away. so they may not increase taxes at the same rate right at first. This is different from the state Propositions 2 and Proposition 4. Those are not tax increases. Those mean the state can borrow $10 billion each and pay it back. The state may later want to increase taxes to be able to pay those bonds off, but the legislature would have to approve them. Right now, all those propositions do is authorize the legislature to borrow the money. School districts spend most of their money on teachers and administrators, but school bonds cannot be used to pay teachers more. They can only be used to build and repair things. And that's why builders and labor unions for workers that build things like them so much. I'm Scott Lewis, and that's why it matters.
KPBS has been reaching out to San Diego's congressional representatives ahead of the November election. Public Matters reporter Amita Sharma spoke with Democratic Congresswoman Sarah Jacobs about the presidential race and whether a ceasefire between Hamas and Israel is in the cards. She begins with what she's hearing from constituents about the upcoming election.
Constituents are anxious about the election, especially for many of us for whom reproductive rights is deeply personal. There's really a sense of foreboding that this could decide whether or not we have rights, even in a state like California, because a federal abortion ban really could override all of our protections here in California. And I've been traveling across the country on behalf of the Harris Waltz campaign, talking in particular to young people and to women in states like Michigan and New Hampshire, Nevada. And a lot of what I'm hearing is young people really understanding the stakes of this election and really understanding that it's important to make their voice heard because their rights really are on the line.
How precarious is democracy in the United States right now?
We're really at an important moment. And what happens over the next 30 or so days could really be determinative in how our country moves forward. My background's actually in conflict, in post-coup transitions, in electoral violence, and so I know that this is a really critical and a really fragile time for our country. And one of the most important things will be making sure that all of us make our voices heard and that we all understand we have agency and that there are things we can do to make sure that we preserve our democracy, and a big part of that is voting in this upcoming election.
You were a freshly sworn in Congresswoman on January 6, 2021. You were at the Capitol building. What was that day like for you?
So I was in the gallery overlooking the House floor, and I just remember when the Capitol Police came out and said, you know, there's tear gas in the rotunda, take out the gas masks from under your seats. I didn't even know there were gas masks under our seats. Eventually, we were hiding under the seats. I was literally, it was my fourth day, I was literally still introducing myself to my colleagues. We could hear in the wall behind us the crowd sort of rushing in, the mob, and I later learned it was only 30 seconds from when I was pulled across a hallway to when the insurrectionists got there. And I will say, in all of my time and experience working around the world in conflict situations, this is the closest I ever felt to feeling like this might be the end.
Do you anticipate similar violence this time around?
I'm really concerned about what former President Trump might try and do this time around. And one of the things I'm incredibly concerned about is the role of the House, because we know that Mike Johnson, the current Speaker of the House, the New York Times called him the architect of the effort to overturn the election in 2020. And so I'm very concerned if we don't win back the House this election, what might happen with Mike Johnson at the helm and what he might do to try and install Donald Trump even against the will of the people.
Turning our attention to foreign policy briefly, you sit on the House Foreign Relations Committee. What are the prospects for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas at this point?
Secretary Blinken is in the region at this moment trying to get a ceasefire. I think that there are talks are ongoing. I won't say that we're close or it's easy, but I do think we have a window of opportunity here, and I think it's time. It's time. Israel has achieved any sort of military objectives it said it wants to achieve, and it's time to have a deal to get humanitarian assistance into Gaza, to end the fighting, and to bring the hostages home.
You skipped Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's joint address to Congress back in June, citing the Palestinian death toll of around 39,000 at the time. I think it's about 42,000 now. And you said that Israel's military response to the October 7th attack by Hamas had not been proportional, strategic, or effective, and that you could not, therefore, in good conscience, attend the speech. You faced accusations from members of the Jewish community that you were not sufficiently pro-Israel. How did that criticism land with you?
So I'm Jewish. I have close family who lives in Israel, my aunt, uncle, and cousin. So this issue is deeply, deeply personal to me, and I've traveled all around Israel. I've been to the West Bank, I've been to Gaza, and the safety and security of Israel is something I care a lot about, and it's why I feel so strongly that the way Netanyahu has responded to October 7th hasn't actually made Israel any safer. And so, you know, of course, it always hurts when especially people in your own community question your motives or, you know, don't agree with you. Everyone's not going to agree with me all the time, but I still feel very strongly that the way Netanyahu has led Israel is not actually making Israel any safer. And what will make Israel safer is finding a path to get two-state solution so that Palestinians have autonomy and dignity. And in this case, that means making sure that Palestinians have a state where they get a say in their future.
Congresswoman Jacobs, thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
And that was Amitha Sharma reporting. Congresswoman Jacobs' grandfather is Erwin Jacobs, who is a supporter of KPBS and Public Matters. You can see more of our stories at kpbs.org/Public Matters. The Justice Department says Elon Musk's $1 million sweepstakes for swing state voters may violate federal election law. The billionaire's offer states that people who sign a petition in support of the First and Second Amendments will enter a random daily drawing for $1 million prize. But to sign the petition, you must be registered to vote in certain states. Federal law prohibits paying people to register to vote.
Well, we'll start you off with your weather headlines. We're already halfway through the week, so what else do we need to know? We've had that brief warm up, and we stay pretty warm here for another day, especially for inland areas. Though we have been talking about those low clouds expanding, they will do so as we head into the later half of the week. But by next week, things start to turn a little cooler and winds start to pick up, as well as we are talking about an area of low pressure there that's going to be impacting the west coast. Now tonight here along the coast, we're dropping down to the 50s, low 50s if you're in Oceanside, but mid 50s if you're in San Diego. And the further south you go, similar story as we head further inland. Ramona at 48, Borrego Springs bottoming out at 60. Now for our Thursday, things still a little hot, especially across the desert southwest, anywhere across inland California, southern Nevada, and then down through southern Arizona. Phoenix still going to be a little toasty here as we head into tomorrow. Now for here, closer to home, 89 in Ramona. Borrego Springs, you're still sitting in the mid-90s. Mount Laguna, you'll be flirting with 70. And San Diego, Oceanside, you're staying relatively steady here in the mid-70s. Here along the coast for your 5-day outlook, you'll see some fog. Like we said, those low clouds, the fog will start to expand here and thicken a little bit as we head into the late week. That's going to stick with us here through the beginning of the weekend. Highs going to be running in the mid-70s, lows dropping down to the 50s. My Sunday, Monday, highs remaining in the 70s there, but you will start to see those temperatures drop a little bit for the start of the work week. Similar story for areas further inland. We'll actually see some more clouds by next week, but in the meantime, still going to be warm here Thursday. The mercury steadily dropping here Friday, Saturday, even into Sunday, and then we're dropping big time here by Monday. Highs just in the low 70s, and we'll be dealing with a few more clouds. For the mountains, you'll also see a bit of a cool down here Sunday into Monday, but in the short term, Thursday, Friday, we're in the upper 60s, going to be a little breezy there, but remember those winds do pick up even more so as we head into next week. The deserts, wow, you're going to see a big change there, staying in the 90s through Sunday, but then we're dropping down to the 70s there by Monday. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Bree Guy.
I'm Jeff Bennett. On the next news hour, where the presidential candidates stand on the most pressing foreign policy issues facing the country. That's Thursday on the PBS NewsHour.
A former high school softball player from East County is trading in her powder blues for red, white, and blue. Sofia Mujica set a CIF San Diego section record 42 career home runs during her junior year in 2023. She finished her high school career with 60 home runs. And because of that, she earned a tryout in Florida, followed by a training session in Oklahoma. Now she is one of 16 players nationally to make the 2024 U18 women's team.
I am so grateful for the opportunity to be on this team. It is so much fun. It's a 16-player roster, so it's pretty short and simple, which is awesome. So when I saw my photo was up, it was really exciting.
Oh, and by the way, Sophia is also preparing for UCLA softball season this spring, so go Sophia. And here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. Pennsylvania is one of the 7 swing states that will decide this year's election. NPR's Morning Edition will hear from 3 voters. And KPBS Midday Edition is rounding up all the best arts and culture events around town for the weekend preview. And be sure to add KPBS to your playlist. We recently launched 2 new podcasts, Rap Diego and Free Jane, to our collection. We also have daily content from our newsroom with San Diego News Now and Midday Edition. Just search for KPBS on Apple, Spotify, and other podcast platforms. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.